Each step we took through the forest, I felt more and more insecure. Kira was standing nearby, talking to her sister. I couldn't make out their entire conversation, but I heard my name a few times. Half of the time I was looking ahead of the path, thinking of what to expect. What did the warlock even look like? I hadn't gotten a good look at the warlocks I had fought before because they were cloaked, but I did see greenish skin and red eyes. The other half of the time I was looking towards Liru and Kira. Their bushy pink and orange tails wagging as they walked seemed a bit weird to me, but that was probably because I hadn't exactly seen fox girls before, except on DeviantArt. However, Liru turned around, noticing I had taken a few glances at her. Her cheeks puffed up and her face turned red.
Are you looking at my butt?
No, I'm not.
Pervert!
Liru kicked me in the foot, causing me to fall backwards. Kira giggled from behind her, watching me with a smile. I nervously smiled at them. Jack looked back at me, smirking as well.
That used to be me. Don't worry, you'll get used to it.
Jack was marching ahead, looking over his menu every once in a while. A level 60 like him could probably beat the boss. There were only a few in the game, but considering that the boss was placed right next to a place filled with low-level players, it couldn't be that hard to beat. I was so wrong. We stopped right outside a clearing, Jack straying us off the path and into a few bushes.
What is it?
Asked Liru as she continued to munch on the candy Kira summoned. Jack pulled out a few things, including several bottles filled with colorful liquid. One was blue and two were red. Potions?
Potions. They are similar to crystals, except their effects are used mostly for transfiguration and other magic uses, while crystals are for combat status boosts.
He handed us each one, and I looked over the label. It simply had a few random symbols on it. However, they were not random upon a closer appearance. They looked to be some sort of language. Ruins?
Drink it if you get low, or when I tell you. Now everyone use resistance crystals, and prepare to fight.
We all nodded, opening up inventories. I pulled out another resistance crystal, grabbing the shining stone and crushing it in my hand. Liru and Kira did the same, their bodies beginning to glow. So, what's the rest of the plan? Just crystals and potions? There aren't any kind of attack patterns or special abilities? I asked him.
Attack patterns? No. Special abilities? No idea. The bosses in this game are completely AI controlled, so no computer telling it what attacks to do in a specific order. Just gives it weapons and powers and lets it have at it with us.
He unsheathed his blade, looking out from the bush. There was a large magic aura coming from the center of the clearing.
Now we go!
The four of us charged into the field, our weapons ready. Me and my sword, Kira and her wand, Liru and her katana, and Jack with his short sword. But as we came out in the clearing, we saw nothing. No boss, no monsters, just... We all watched as it appeared. A man appeared in front of us, his long black cloak ruffling in the wind. He wore a long black cloak that covered most of his body, a silver runic design running along the ends of his sleeves and hood. His arms sticking out of his cloak were burnt and red, and all we could see within the darkness beneath his hood were two red eyes. In his left hand was a floating blue tome, a ball of dark magic floating within the open book, and in his right was a long wooden staff with a glowing red crystal on the end. The warlock slowly floated forward, levitating above the ground and leaving a trail of darkness behind him. He stabbed his staff down into the dirt and warped the book away, leaving both of his hands empty. That is, until blue flames emerged from his grasp, and a long silver battle axe appeared as his weapon choice.
Endure Susur!
He threw the battle axe towards us, the blade narrowly missing Jack and smashing into the dirt. I drew my sword and charged at him, Liru right behind me. Star Blitz! I slashed my sword across his abdomen, cutting into his body and spewing blood onto the floor. Stars and sparkles streaked across from the cut from my blade, but the warlock just stared. He swung his axe at me, which I quickly dodged. However, as he ripped the weapon from the dirt, he knocked me into the air with his grip. I rolled away, losing my weapon in the dirt. Before he could attack me, Liru came from behind.
Ocean Storm!
She stabbed the blade into the guy's neck, water spraying from the tip. Since the tip of the blade was jabbed inside of his neck, a large explosion of water burst from the stab wound. The warlock simply lunged at her, knocking her away. The warlock king went for Liru, whose guard was down, but a large beam of purple energy smashed into his chest. He stumbled back and looked around for the attacker. Kira was walking forward, casting spells with her wand. Me and Liru both glowed, our resistance crystal effects being renewed by a spell. We both rose up, ready to attack, but Jack ran forward, ready to kill. The warlock dropped the axe, grabbing a spellbook that had been floating next to him instead.
Celestial meteors!
The sky became dark, and we could all see it. Several rocks glowing a purple shade falling from the sky. But Jack kept running, oblivious of the fact that he was about to be killed. The meteors smashed into the ground, exploding as they hit the ground. A large burst of purple energy blinded us, but as the energy cleared, we could see it. Jack stood on top of one of the meteors, holding his sword. The Warlock King just stared at him in annoyance. Jack smirked from below the mask of his failed attack. But that didn't last long. 2 more axes appeared in the Warlock's hands. He continued to throw, axes reappearing in his hands. We were forced to run, the blades spinning past us. An axe narrowly missed us, but tripped Liru. She fell to the floor, her leg being cut on the blade. The Warlock King turned to her, dropping the axes and focusing on his book. 2 large orange runic rings appeared in his hands. He was going to cast a spell, most likely one that'd end her.
Kira, do something!
Yelled Liru as she backed away. Kira pulled her wand, pointing it at the Warlock King.
Binding Ringu.
A large ring appeared around the king, immediately becoming smaller and smaller until it wrapped around his body. His arms were trapped in the vines, but it wasn't enough. The Warlock King broke through the ring in seconds and gave a loud scream as he began firing spells rapidly into the air. Kira pointed her wand at Liru, muttering a few words and healing her. The cut on her leg closed up, leaving only a bit of blood. Before we could retaliate, the Warlock broke out.
Alright, I'll go left. You go right. Kira, keep us covered.
Said Liru as she drew her sword. I drew mine, and we charged at the boss. The boss created 2 more spell rings, but this time they were yellow. We watched as the clouds became darker, and a rain of attacks came. Literally. 2 strikes of lightning smashed down into the clearing, just narrowly missing us. One of them, however, came down right on me. I swung my sword to block. Only thing was, I wasn't that good. The lightning strike came down on me, ready to eliminate me. A boss against a level 1, maybe level 2 by now? A single attack would destroy me. I braced for the pain and prepared for death.
Akuma no Tate.
As the lightning strike came down to hit me, a large red sphere appeared around me. The strike smashed into the force field, wrapping itself around me before exploding into sparks. The shield faded right after, and I looked back to see Kira collapse. Whatever spell that was too much for her. We both got close enough and I jumped into the air. Liru followed, and we both swung our swords downwards towards the monster's arms. We cut into his body, causing the Warlock to scream before throwing us off. The 2 of us smashed into the ground, dropping our swords. Our health bars both went down. But one thing came to mind. Where was Jack?
You dare defy me? Now you will burn! Fiery rings!
The Warlock King began glowing red, and I watched as a large ring of fire appeared. Lines of fire began spiking from the ring, reaching the ends of the clearing. I dived out of the way of one as it burnt where I'd been standing. However, I had rolled the wrong way, and my sword was trapped on the other side. He had divided the battlefield like a pizza. Liru reclaimed her sword, running in front of me in case anything came at us. The fire then stopped, the Warlock King gone when the flames faded. We both went back to back, looking across the field. However, it was gone.
Devil's Shield? She used that spell? For you?
I punched forward, completely missing him. He reappeared next to us, revealing his battle axe. I watched in horror as he swung to the side, splashing red liquid onto the ground. Liru? She stood there, clutching her stomach and attempting to breathe as the Warlock King's battle axe dug into her stomach. He ripped it out, the girl falling forward and hitting the floor. Liru! I knelt down, taking her hand. She coughed before finally her body began to fade. It turned white, transforming into a small glowing sphere. She'd been given a game over, and unless one of us revived her, she'd have to start back over at her last checkpoint. Most likely that'd be Bandora City. She'd have to walk all the way back. The Warlock eyed me, looking at me in a certain way. Its eyes then flashed, and I realized my mistake. Everything began fading away, turning black. No! Stop! I muttered as my strength began to die. I couldn't even talk.
She used the Devil's Shield spell on you? Why? Are you family? Friends? Lovers?
What? Who? What are you talking about? Everything was black. It was all shadows. Then, I saw someone. It was the boy, my friend from school. He walked over towards me, and I put my hand up to touch him. But before I could say anything, he spoke.
American loser?
The other kids appeared from the shadows, standing behind him. They all began shouting, calling me names, some of them trying to punch me and others putting up rude hand gestures. Slowly, I fell to my knees. I felt powerless, weak, useless. I then saw a hand appear from the darkness. He opened his grip to reveal a knife.
Do it, Aldren. End it.
I put the knife up to my throat, ready to slash it. Before I could, a voice called out.
Aldren, look away!
My vision cleared, my strength returned. I looked ahead to see Jack holding his sword, digging the blade into the chest of the boss. Blood was spewing out like a shaken-up pop puddle, but the boss's health wasn't going down fast enough. Suddenly, the Warlock King began to glow, and I watched as it launched Jack back. He flew across the clearing, smashing into the tree before falling to the floor. I dived to the side as he swung at me with the battle axe, the blade becoming stuck in the ground. I then ran towards my sword, but watched as a large blast of ice came straight at me. Ah! I fell to the floor, the ice completely frozen into my leg. I couldn't move it, or even feel it. My leg was trapped. The Warlock pulled his axe from the dirt, slowly walking over to me.
A level 2. How have you survived this long? No matter. Time for you to die!
The Warlock held its axe up and prepared to swing it downwards. But I couldn't die now. I quickly opened the menu, summoning a resistance crystal. The blade came down, cutting into the menu and destroying it. Not before the crystal could appear in my hands. The axe came down and I caught it. The blade smashed the crystal in my palm, giving me strength. I was able to hold his weapon up, keeping him from cutting through me. But the sharpened blade was cutting into my hand, and blood was dripping down my palms.
Shokansuru!
My sword flew from its spot in the dirt, spiraling through the air before landing in the hand of Kira. She threw it towards me, and I caught it with my excess hand. I then stabbed the blade through the back of the Warlock's neck as I caught his own axe with my other palm. Blood spewed onto my outfit, dripping onto my face, but as I dug the sword deeper, I noticed the tip glowing. I decided to do it. An elemental attack. Flame burst! My sword burst into flames, showering the Warlock. The flames danced across his body, moving across the clearing as he screamed in agony. I then kicked upwards, sending the monster flying into the air. The Warlock King disappeared, a cloud of smoke appearing where he once was. He reappeared in the middle of the clearing. His health bar was only half down? The king then smashed his fist into the floor, causing cracks to appear throughout the clearing. A shining blue light began to erupt from between the cracks, and I quickly made a jump backwards as a crack appeared from under me. We all watched as a wave of dark magic burst from the ground, creating walls between everything. They all exploded, revealing the Warlock King. He lunged at me, casting another spell.
Sword of Flames!
In his hand appeared a longsword, except it was completely made of fire. He slashed at me twice. Both times I dodged. However, the third time he slashed downwards across my arm, and I was thrown to the dirt. But before he could cut me down, a large spell came upon him, hitting him in the chest. Kira came from behind, holding her wand up as a beam of magic wrapped itself around the king. However, he broke out, slashing at Kira. In a single motion, I swung my sword, taking the hit and being thrown across the clearing. I smashed into the ground, watching as my health was almost completely depleted. Kira stepped back from the king, trying to cast another spell as I healed myself with a crystal.
Metallum Bellator!
The ground began to shake, and I watched as several silver stones burst from the ground. They began to smash into each other, creating life. As they fused, I could see the shapes of arms, legs, and glowing gold eyes appear. A silver golem.
Bella! Go, my creation!
The golem known as Velok charged forward, grabbing the Warlock King on the arm and throwing him to the floor. Velok then smashed its metal fist into the king's stomach. But when he retracted his hand to do it again, the Warlock King found an opening.
Suton Sumashu!
A large silver beam burst from his palm, smashing into the golem. We both watched in horror as the golem was thrown off of him, smashing down into the ground with a large crater in his chest.
Bella!
Kira ran to the golem, kneeling down next to her spell-created monster. He was staring up at the sky lifelessly as the Warlock King rose back up, preparing to fire once more. I dashed to Kira, tackled her out of the way. He sent another beam behind us, and we watched as the golem exploded into silver stones, dying once and for all. Jack ran over to me, using a health crystal to replenish himself. Kira sat next to Liru, trying to revive her. She was holding a wand over a small glowing flame, slowly bringing her back to life. What's the plan? Jack, I muttered as I tried to catch my breath. Fighting had taken a lot out of me, and we still weren't done.
We have to use the potions. Kira, use yours.
Kira nodded and ran forward, taking her potion. She uncapped it and gulped it down in an instant. What's it gonna do?
Step back!
She gestured me back, and we walked towards the edge of the clearing, the combat barrier glowing behind us. Kira began to change, slowly changing into something different. Holy... whatever... is she
A phoenix? Yes, she is.
Kira had transformed into a large, flaming bird, the creature flying in circles around the Warlock King. He was screaming in pain as the flames came upon him. Jack then looked at me. I sighed, opening my inventory and retrieving the bottle. Still couldn't tell what the label was, but hopefully it was good. I began to gulp down the vial, its juices going down my throat. I choked for a second and fell forward as it started to take its effects. My hands began to turn red, so did the rest of my body. I was on fire. My body was burning and my hands were holding flames. I floated up, feeling the immense power within me. A fiery aura surrounded me. I could see embers trickling from my fingertips. I raced towards the Warlock, firing a large beam of red flames from my palms. I began to wrap around him, going into a spiral and creating a large storm of flames. Kira and I both floated away, the flames completely submerging him. The Warlock dropped his axe, the flames completely consuming him in a spiral of embers. We watched as his floating book turned to ash upon contact with the fire, and through it he dropped to his knees. Suddenly the flames disappeared and I fell to the floor, the transformation over. Kira fell and I lunged to catch her, but instead she fell right on top of me. She giggled as she rolled off and I groaned in pain, but we both looked to the Warlock King and saw him slowly rise back up. His health bar was low, maybe almost to the point of a few more attacks. But before we could even attack, the ground shook. Several white objects exploded from the dirt, completely surrounding us. A cage of bones. The cage began to close. Slowly, it would crush us to death. Jack looked at us, his eyes widening. He rushed towards the cage and swung a sword, trying to break it open. Alas, the bones were too strong.
No! Damn it!
What's wrong?
Exclaimed Kira. He was looking more alarmed than usual.
If you don't escape the cage, he'll erase your account. Every boss has an attack that will trap you, and if you don't escape, it'll kill your account, and you'll have to restart.
Liru suddenly began shaking. Even her skin turned a pale white. I quickly attempted to pull the bones apart, and surprisingly it was possible. Jack began pulling, but for some reason they wouldn't open.
It can only be opened from the inside.
I knew what had to be done. I quickly grabbed the edges of the cage and began to pull, so it was at least big enough so Kira could escape. Go! Now!
Aldren-kun, I'm not going to...
Just go! I let go and pushed her forward. She fell through the hole in the cage before the bone bars stretched back to normal. I looked into her fearful eyes as she looked into my sorrowful ones as the bone cage finally came to a close. As I took my last look at Kira, my eyes closed. I felt the pain. I felt the crushing, the sound of splattering blood. I was dead.
Game over. Erasing account.
I had lost.
90%.
I was no warrior.
80%.
Aldren was dead.
70%.
Tomorrow I could make a new account.
60%.
But would they even remember me?
50%.
Even if they didn't?
40%.
Kira and Liru would be fined.
30%.
Maybe I'd see him again someday.
20%.
Or maybe I wouldn't.
10%.
It all depends on fate.
Done.
And fate doesn't like me. I opened my eyes and I gripped my bed sheets. I groaned loudly. Had I actually sacrificed my character? Something beeped nearby and I moved my hands up, slipping off the blue visor. I then looked to the side, seeing my computer beeping. I got up out of bed and stumbled towards it, feeling a bit dizzy. On it was the message,
DragonLight Online. Character deleted. Make new account? Yes or no?
Before I could hit yes, a shout came from downstairs.
Dylan, dinner's ready.
My mother yelled. I sighed. Tomorrow I'd make a new account, but for now, I'd go and have dinner. I had to eat, after all. I grabbed my brown hat off the bed and slipped it on, slowly approaching the door. I twisted the handle and began to walk down the stairs. But when I came to the bottom of the stairs and scanned the room, a bead of sweat ran down my face. My sister sat in one chair, and my mother was at the end of the table, glaring at me.
So, son, what did you buy today?
My sister had sold me out.